I expect Oregon to be in the playoff next year. I do not expect them to get my national title hopes up.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thoughts on the high school portal debate, which continues to rage afoot, understandably so. There are a lot of angles to it. And big game for hoops tomorrow. Get to Matthew Knight Arena if you are not planning to be there already on Saturday. But Oregon was in the national championship picture before the season, during the season, and up until about the second quarter came to a close in the Rose Bowl, maybe slightly sooner than that. I don't have those same expectations for Oregon in 2025. I have the same hopes. I always hope that Oregon's going to win the national championship. This year, though, I expected them to be in that conversation. I expected them to make the Big Ten championship game, which they did. I picked them to go 12-0, and I'll tell you right now, perhaps they'll change my mind. I would not pick Oregon to go 12-0. Now, the reason I say they are still a playoff team next year is their schedule is incredibly favorable. But this is a team that is losing a lot. I know there's talent waiting in the wings. I know there are guys they brought in the portal. I know that as well as anybody, since we talk about every guy that comes through the program here on the show. I don't doubt that Oregon will have one of the better rosters in the Big Ten, that their schedule still works out very favorably with no Ohio State and no Michigan on it. But they're losing so much veteran production, I just can't wrap my head around they should be at the same level where they were in 2024. A team that is losing its starting quarterback, running back, 2 receivers, 2 tight ends, 4 offensive linemen, 2 of whom are about to get drafted in the NFL, 3 defensive linemen, all of whom probably get drafted in the NFL, 2 linebackers and 6 defensive backs. Show me the team that lost that much and then went out and even made the national championship game. Most often, when you have teams that make runs to the title game, they are laced with veteran returners all over the roster. Ohio State, for instance, and Oregon had that similarity. You had guys deciding whether to go to the NFL draft or to come back for a final season to make a national title push. And both teams were right in that conversation, in large part because those guys returned. Because they were able to add, yes, a couple of key pieces in the portal, but Ohio State has got guys who are playing their 4th or 5th year of college football everywhere that you look. Will Howard has been, I think this is his 5th year at quarterback. Jeremiah Smith is a very talented young guy. Emeka Egbuka, veteran guy. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Lathan Ransom. These are 4th and 5th year guys everywhere you look. So I believe Oregon's on an upward trajectory and is capable of making the playoff and winning 10, 11 games, which I think is the threshold for getting there. But when you have that much turnover, I just don't go to the expectation or this should happen or you should go into, this game or that game. Like, I don't expect Oregon to be able to play at the same level. I hope they prove me wrong. I really do. But you can't overlook the fact that, yes, you're bringing in a quarterback in Dante Moore that has a higher ceiling, but certainly has a lower floor than what Dylan Gabriel and Bo Nix had the last couple of years. I think Moore's ceiling is closer to Bo Nix than Dylan Gabriel from, an NFL physical trait standpoint, which does indeed matter in college football. But Dante Moore is completely unproven. He's really talented. I'm optimistic about what he can be. Nothing has been proven there. Yes, Oregon's secondary can improve. You lose your top 6 defensive backs. Boy, that's a lot. That's a lot of guys that you have to work in. And you've got to be firing on all cylinders from the get-go. Now, this works out favorably for Oregon because they open the season with Montana State, and that's not going to be the easiest FCS opponent to play. But then their 2 biggest non-conference games are also at home. Oklahoma State, Oregon State. Both games against Black and Orange will be played at Autzen Stadium. I am hard-pressed to pick against Oregon to lose at Autzen. I picked them before the season and before the game to beat Ohio State this year, who is about to go win the national championship on Monday. So I like that the schedule's there. I like that they'll have an opportunity, or at least I expect them to have that opportunity, because I've said this before and continue to believe it with the way that Oregon invests in the football program and the amount of money that they spend and what the possibilities are and being in the Big Ten. The standard for success every single year is, do you make the playoff? That's the line of demarcation for me of, was this a successful season or was this a failure of a season? Now, there are varying levels of success. There are varying levels of failure. The 7-5 year would be a failure. Wouldn't be as big of a failure as going 3-9, which I certainly don't expect to happen. But when you're losing as much veteran talent and production as Oregon is, I just don't come into next season. And why, yes, the Rose Bowl was especially disappointing, because I thought this was a great year. I thought this was a really good year with the talent they had brought in and who they had at quarterback. And you had continuity on the coaching staff, and it looks like you'll certainly have that again going into next season. This was a great opportunity. Oregon missed it. All right, start working towards the next one. And Oregon's not a window program, but every program in college football has national championship windows. There are very, very few that can say they have a national championship expectation or ability year in and year out. Alabama's been the premier program in college football, and I thought they'd be better than 9-4 this year in Kalen DeBoer's first season. I thought they would reach double-digit wins, but I never thought that they would win the SEC championship or win the national championship before the year. They didn't make the SEC title game or make the playoff, but that doesn't mean that Kalen DeBoer can't win national championships at Alabama. He can. It just means in that year, you're looking for good, you're looking for growth, you're looking for pieces, and that's how I'm viewing 2025 right now. Maybe I'll watch the spring game in a couple months, and I'll see how good Dante Moore looks after sitting for a year behind Dylan Gabriel and still having Will Stein there as his offensive coordinator, and maybe it'll all change my mind. I'm open to that. It's happened before. But on paper right now, I do not view Oregon as being capable of putting the same product on the field in 25 as they did in 24. Doesn't mean they aren't an above average team. Doesn't mean they shouldn't expect to win double-digit games. But to me, that's more a function of what their schedule looks like. I think if you took 2025 Oregon, how I think that team likely looks, and you gave it 2024's schedule, you definitely lose to Ohio State. They had a pretty favorable schedule this year as well. They're probably 10-2. They're probably 10-2. They probably don't win that Wisconsin game, and they lose to Ohio State. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great season. You get a chance. Maybe you get into a playoff game and crazy play happens, or fluky this or fluky that, or young guys really start to develop over the course of the year and start playing their best football. I'd rather have an opportunity that I don't think can result in a national championship run than not have the opportunity at all, because I am not always right. I know it's a shocking thing to admit, but alas, that's how it goes. So let me know your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below, and we'll just kind of go from there. You can hit me up on Twitter as well. The high school recruiting debate versus the portal, when to play guys, when to do this, needs numerical context that I'm going to provide. But first, I'm providing you with information about Prize Picks. This message brought to you by Prize Picks, the place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions, that's billions with a B, in winnings. Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or the regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least two players, and if your picks hit, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right. 1,000 times your cash just by making a few simple picks. If you think Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to pop off, or if you think Travis Kelce is going to go dormant, you go try your luck over at Prize Picks. That's the place to go. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, so every time Oregon adds a transfer, other fan bases really freak out. It's quite hilarious. But hey, when you live rent-free in somebody else's head, you just got to sit there and appreciate that for what it is. But there is, if you weed through all of the social media commentary, a good point to make that I began talking about in yesterday's show and want to follow up with here today. So if you missed it, the debate here is essentially surrounding, if you bring in a veteran transfer, aren't you depriving the opportunity to play and develop younger guys that you have recruited? At some level, that is indeed true. I think what fans should have is an expectation of what a highly rated recruiting class means. And Oregon is not uncommon with the numbers that I'm about to give you here. So I'm going off the 2021, 22, and 23 recruiting classes, because when you bring in guys that allow Oregon to have a top 10 class, which those classes for the most part have been, the last couple cycles have been very, very good to the Ducks because Dan Lanning and Tosh Lupoy and everyone are excellent recruiters. They've invested in it and they do a really, really good job. When you bring in all of those guys, what I get a lot of questions about that makes me think it's not necessarily widely understood is about how many of those guys from that high school class you should expect to become high impact players. So I'm not doing a timeline for every one of these guys. I'm just going class by class here. So 2021, first time Oregon ever had a top 10 recruiting class in the history of Oregon football. That was, of course, under Mario Cristobal. They brought in 24 players in that class. The number of guys that I describe as high impact players in their Oregon careers, not necessarily as true freshmen, 4. Other guys had various roles popped up here and there. 4 guys: Troy Franklin, Terrence Ferguson, Jeff Bossa, Jackson Powers Johnson. That's the standard I have for high impact. So that's 21. In 2022, it was a smaller high school class because you had Mario Cristobal leave, and that creates a lot of discontinuity in there. 17 players in that high school class. 8 of them I describe as high impact players. And the high impact component of this is based on whether I can immediately think of in big games consistently or in at least several key moments over the last couple of seasons where their impact has been felt. So from that 2022 class, Josh Connerly, that's a high impact guy. Jaleel Florence started last year, was hurt this past year, but should be back, probably one of Oregon's starting corners this fall. Devin Jackson, definitely. Jordan James, obviously. Amarion Winston, played all the time. He's in the transfer portal now. Dave Iuli played a lot this year, more than he ever has. So did Kavika Rogers, who was in that class, and Justice Lowe. Now, not all of these guys these were not all of the guys that made any sort of impact. But again, 8 out of 17, that's a higher percentage than any of the 3 classes I'm looking at. And you have to allow for there to be some development time. So these numbers could be different if I were to do an examination of the same classes, maybe not the same classes, but the 23 class at least in a year's time. Because the 2023 class, the first full one under Dan Lanning and company, brought in 29 players from the high school ranks. So far, I'd say 5 guys have been high impact players and a couple of kind of moderate impact dudes. Poncho started at center this year. Amari Washington, I am chair of his fan club. I humbly accept that nomination, and I'm grateful for such an honor. Tatum Tuioti, 2-year starter. Kenyon Sadiq, didn't make a big impact last year, but obviously a big part of the offense this year, and I think is going to burst onto the scene come 2025. And Mateo Uiagalelei. Those are the high impact guys. Then there have been some others that have popped up here and there. Blake Purchase, redshirted this year, but played all of last season. Janoris Wilson, the jumbo package tackle, could be a candidate as a potential starting offensive tackle for the Ducks this year. Jaden Lamar, hero of the Boise State game, picking up the ball that Noah Whittington dropped at the goal line. And Jaden Moore, who's also in the portal, but was a part of Oregon's speed rush package to get to the quarterback this year. So again, 4 out of 24, 8 out of 17, 5 out of 29. And that last number, that could change after this year. That's what it is. This is not unique to Oregon. The Ducks are not being built in the transfer portal. They're certainly using it. I'm not trying to downplay what Oregon's doing there. And by the way, I think using the portal to fill needs and get talented players is a really good thing. But this is what the world of college football is now. You're trying to find the most talented guys that give you the best chance to win at every position every single year. And sometimes that's going to be a former high school recruit, and sometimes recruits are not going to pan out. But to have that many players, I mean, that's dozens of guys whose names I'm not listing here, many of whom, most of whom, frankly, were blue chip recruits coming out of high school that are not seeing the field. They're either transferring away or they're just buried on the depth chart right now. And maybe they're going to pop this season. I mean, Kavika Rogers hadn't really played in a meaningful way until this season. All of a sudden, he's on the field all the time. Davey Uli, same thing. He was a 22 recruit. Hadn't played a lot. All of a sudden, you need Davey Uli in some big spots. So this balance back and forth of bringing in a transfer, bringing in a high school guy, you have to understand that it's kind of impossible to know. You can theorize, you can guess, and sometimes you'll be right, but no one's going to be right 100% of the time on which high school recruits are going to wind up being high-impact players. You can see the potential in all of them when you watch their film against high school kids, but they haven't played on a field where everybody is that good. Some guys can make that jump, some guys cannot. But when you bring in a high school recruiting class and it's, anywhere from 15 to 30 or 17 to 30 kids or whatever, you should not have the expectation that even half of them become high impact guys. You might see some moderate impact that pushes that number over half in terms of the number that contribute, but it's never, and this is the same way everywhere else. That's just the way that recruiting works now. So I touched on that yesterday and wanted to give some numerical context there. I got a mailbag question somewhat on the recruiting front, which you can submit as well. YouTube comments below, hit me up on Twitter, or you can become a Locked On Ducks insider. You get priority mailbag access, bunch of other perks as well. I respond a lot more often over there. And one of those insiders sent in this question that goes like this. What is your take on the Oregon, brand is what he's going for. What is your take on the Oregon band versus the other Big Ten bands/brands, uniforms, overall quality, and does anyone important care? I'm a solid meh on caring, but we sounded quiet at the Rose Bowl in comparison to Ohio. Well, yeah, you're not going to make a lot of noise when you go down 34-0. Fans, band, whoever there. But I got to be honest, I thought that was a typo, and then I read the question and realized, no, you did actually mean band. Being in the band, I think it's a fantastic part of college athletics. I've been listening to Oregon's band my whole life. I think they sound good. I noticed that they're there at Autzen Stadium, on the road, wherever. So as for the branding part of it, compared to everybody else in the Big Ten, you look at Oregon's recruiting efforts, and any time the Ducks take flack for, the uniform combinations or Phil Knight or Nike or all that sort of stuff, it's all kind of building to something. It's like making a Lego pyramid. Okay, you put this brick on, a very simplistic Lego pyramid, obviously compared to what you would actually make if you made like a real size pyramid out of Legos, which, I could do if I had some scrap pieces together. But anyway, if you're making a Lego pyramid, you put down one brick, and that one brick nowadays that's NIL investment, okay? You got to have that brick. Maybe that's worth 3 bricks. So you put that down. Then you've got to have a staff that's good at building relationships. That's another few bricks. And then you've got the brand power of Oregon, which I hear all the time from guys like Brian, who cover recruiting consistently, and many others as well, that the discourse you hear or that you see online about Oregon doesn't reflect what a lot of other people hear about it, right? Because you might hear from Washington or USC fans that Oregon's never won a national championship before. Meanwhile, some blue chip recruit who's from the other side of the country, you know what he probably knows about Oregon? Man, they look awesome on TV. That's what he knows. He doesn't go in. I can promise every kid is different, to be sure. The overwhelming majority think about that stuff, and it's a way to recognize and make Oregon a familiar brand to them and one that they'd be willing to go and play football for. That's another Lego brick. Getting out on the trail, having the necessary recruiting budget, making the right connections, manage it. It's all Lego bricks. So it's not everything, but it is one of the bricks in there. And if you take it out, there'd be a hole in the pyramid. Might still stand, but it's got a hole in it. You don't want to have that, of course, because then if you take out another brick and so on and so on. So, good question. Bringing up that's the first time I've ever gotten a question where the Oregon band gets mentioned. Shout out to the band members out there. I wonder if I've got any listener watching the show. If I do, appreciate you very much and the work that you do on game days. So, we're talking hoops to wrap up today's show because Oregon's got a big game. I hope you're going to Matthew Knight Arena on Saturday if you haven't made plans to already. I will tell you why you should be doing that. Before we talk hoops, let's talk FanDuel. That's the place to go because from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. $300, $300 to keep the action going. And if you want to spice up the college football playoff national championship game, you can do that as well. I like Ohio State in the points. Swallow them. I think the Buckeyes are winning big. And we'll look back and say, yep, Oregon lost to and beat the eventual national champions, which isn't the first time that we'll be able to have said that in a variety of sports, basketball included, which we're going to get to here in just a moment. Oregon has famously lost to Louisville in their national title run. North Carolina in the Final Four, they won the national championship, and Virginia in 2019. So all fun stuff. And there's fun stuff at FanDuel as well. FanDuel.com, that's where you go to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com, make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So, top 20 matchup on Saturday. Oregon, Purdue, 13 and 17, I believe they're ranked going into the game. I'm stoked for this one. It's at noon Pacific time. Games on NBC and Peacock. Purdue's 14-4, ranked 17th in the country. Oregon's 15-2, ranked 13th in the country. Now, I could do a big long segment about Purdue and what they've done this year and replacing Zach Edey and all that sort of stuff. They're just a good program. They're a historically good basketball program that is one of the top seeds in the tournament every single year. Matt Painter's a really good coach. Dana Altman's a really good coach. But biggest thing that I want to say here, and this has been part of a multi-year effort on my part, and I think some progress has been made, but Matt Prame of 24/7 Sports has pointed this out as well, is that the attendance and support for basketball is not at the same level as it is for football. It should be. It's not, but it should be, particularly when they're having a season like this. Oregon's really good. Are they perfect? No, I'll talk about that in a sec. But if you are in the greater Eugene area or can drive to the game, go. Make an environment. Make it a home court advantage comparable to what you've got at Autzen Stadium. And yes, the last time Oregon stepped on to the court, they snuck by Maryland. The time before that, they got blasted by Illinois. I know that wasn't great. That Illinois game, bad performance. It's college basketball. It happens. So, then they had a bounce-back game against Maryland. Would it have been helpful to the guys to go out there and see a 50% capacity crowd after the game against Illinois? No, of course not. So, for those that do go, make it as great of a home court advantage as you can because this is a big-time matchup. And Big Ten basketball is really good. It's good year in and year out. They don't always have the same level of success in the tournament as it looks like they will going into it, but they are littering the top 25 right now. I mean, they are all over the place. The top 25 rankings include, but are not limited to, the following Big Ten teams. Michigan State is at 12, one spot ahead of Oregon, who's of course there. Purdue is at number 17. Illinois is number 19. And Wisconsin is also into the top 25. And UCLA has been in it for a while. They're fading a bit at the moment. Maryland's getting votes. Like, this is just a really, really good league. But Oregon is tied with Auburn, the number one team in the country right now, for the most quad one victories. So does Oregon need this per se as a resume booster? No. But if you win this game, the path to being a top 2 or 3 seed, which is historically the best way to make a run to the Final Four, have more wins like this. And what Oregon did on the road was really impressive on the one hand. On the other hand, is not super sustainable. Now, great teams, especially in basketball, you just find a way to win. And that's what Oregon did. Against Ohio State, they were down most of the game. They came back late. They found a way to win. Penn State, they controlled it early. Then they got flat. They hit a lull in the middle of the game. And kind of the middle of the second half, Penn State came back, took the lead. Oregon had to come back again. So I think it's great that the Ducks have the ability to come back late in a game. They have shown that over and over and over again. If Oregon is down 7 with 3 minutes to go, don't turn the game off and think, shoot, they didn't get it done today. Because they are able to drive themselves mentally to just find a way to win. They have shown ridiculous resilience. And I think a big part of that, frankly, going back to my discussion earlier about Oregon football and the veteran nature of the roster, this is an incredibly veteran team. Like Shellstad and Evans are true sophomores, and Evans has been playing really good ball. But I mean, Nate Biddle is a veteran. TJ Bamba is a veteran. Barthelemy been around for a long time. Bam Tracy is a veteran as well. Supreme Cook, super experienced player. Like, they have a ton of experience, and it shows. And the best part of all of this is that Jackson Shellstad is finding his three-point shot. Now, he's not going to go 75% from range over a 2-game stretch as he did last week against Ohio State and Penn State, but or dating back to the Maryland game as well when he was 5 of 5. I think he is on an absolute heater, which you knew was coming because he was ice cold from beyond the arc. But he's playing great. He's hitting big shots down the stretch, and he is the guy that we all thought he could be before the season. So those are all great things to see, but Oregon's depth, versatility, and talent have been on display time and again. That's how they keep just finding a way to win. But what they have to avoid in this game against a team like Purdue is you cannot have the lull. You saw what happened when you had the lull against Illinois. I never felt they really had it against Maryland. They just didn't get off to a great start, but sometimes they get off to good starts and sometimes they don't. That's not a recurring theme for this Oregon team right now. But what they are able to do is when they have the right mental tick for the 5 guys that are on the court, they are a darn good basketball team. Shooting, defense, versatility to score inside and out. They have everything that you want. Biddle is so good. Shellstad's a beast. Evans is playing better. Brandon Angel's struggling. I hope they can maybe get him going a bit again. But Barthelemy off the bench is good. Bamba is slashing and Bamba needs to drive. Every single one of TJ Bamba's first 5 shots should come within 7 feet of the basket. That should be a rule before he can try to get the 3-point shot going. But be helpful if he did. Good news, though, is when he can't hit threes, Dana just subs in Keyshawn Barthelemy, who I'm surprised when Barthelemy misses. He's been so good this year. So this is a great opportunity for Oregon to continue to build a resume that gets them a top 2 or 3 seed. And yeah, I trust Dana Altman no matter what when it comes to tournament time. He has never lost, knock on wood, a first-round NCAA tournament game. But for all the talk of Cinderellas in March Madness, that tends to last for the first and kind of second weekend. Every now and then, yeah, you see an NC State as an 11 seed make a run to the Final Four, and that's awesome. I firmly believe that a double-digit seed will win the national championship one day in college basketball. I firmly believe that. However, when you look at what the seeding is of the Final Four every year, you've got a lot of the top seeds in there because they've got an easier path. Unlike the 12-team college football playoff, having the higher seed gives you a tangibly and objectively easier path to making a run. So I would very much like for Oregon to win this game. I won't gaslight you and say it's do or die. They've got to have it. They've got to prove. No, it's just a game that you'd really like to have. And you'd like to know, or this, I think this team would like to know that they've got Oregon fans behind them. I know there's still PTSD from the Rose Bowl run, but this is a really good, deep veteran team who, like Oregon football, frankly, is going to undergo a soft reset. Not a hard reset, but a soft reset after this season because you're going to have a lot of seniors. I mean, Bam Tracy might try to get another year of eligibility, but right now, looking ahead to next year, I can confidently say that you're going to have Jackson Shelstad, maybe KJ Evans, maybe Bam Tracy. And then I don't know. Everybody else is a senior. Super experienced group. So get to Matthew Niderita, 12 p.m. Pacific time. If you can't get there, game is on NBC and Peacock. Should be an awesome game. Hope it's a great environment. And if Oregon gets a win, that is another really, really strong feather in their cap to be a top 2 or 3 seed come tournament time. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend. And go Ducks.